here. Just following down our key components of Section 5, the first area we talked about was learn that individual identity includes racial, ethnic, sexual, spiritual, and other components of identity. And hopefully we hit on that and answered all the questions. Now we're going to go into the area called exploring individual identity to reflect further on the role of identity development in our own lives and those of our youth that we foster. It is critical for foster parents, case managers to recognize, respect, and offer chances for individual exploration of culture, historical, and gender issues, a core principle of trauma-informed care. And we're going to talk about, the first one we're going to talk about is your racial identity, is how you view yourself in terms of your race. For example, Anisha is an African-American teenager living in New York City, whose parents immigrated from South Africa before she was born. As a member of the black community, she is aware of the struggles faced by the minorities in America and is proud of their many important contributions to society. That's what we call racial identity. Components of identity. Your ethnic identity is how you view yourself in relationship to those with whom you share common ancestry and history. Anisha understands that her parents and extended relatives lived through apartheid in South Africa, and she admires her ancestors for enduring such hardship. Ethnic identity. Your culture identity is how you view yourself in relationship to those with whom you share a similar belief, values, and traditions. Living in a neighborhood of mostly African immigrants, Anisha participates in traditional holidays festives, such as the Rites of the Rain Queen, while as a first-generation American, she also celebrates the 4th of July. That's cultural identity. Some components of identity, you have the race, ethnicity, culture. Some additional components of identity include your gender identity, sexual orientation, nationality, and others. And I just want to hit briefly on the sexual orientation. I know when I was growing up, most of the time when we talk about sexual orientation, we were talking about the older individuals. I knew it hit me when I was in college, and I understood that we had individuals that were lesbian and gay. But what's happening now? These children at an early age are starting to express their sexual orientation, even as young as middle school. So you got to be open. You got to be, like the guys, you got to discuss it. You can't treat it like the elephant in the room. And we always tell our parents that, if you have a serious issue with a child being lesbian or gay, whatever, you need to let your case manager know that. You need to let the case manager know that. Because that is starting to happen now at more of an early age than when I was growing up. So just remember those type of things. The nationalities and others. All right. Over time, Anisha is knitting together individual identity by trying various hairstyles, exploring her gender expression, and making connections among other components of her identity, including her race, ethnicity, and culture. Right now, we're going to do an activity. What thoughts, comments, or reactions do you have towards the film? Towards the film? We're going to answer some questions here. And I'm going to have Adora just go over those questions with you.
Okay, just as a general dialogue, what are some challenges you or your foster youth have faced involving cultural diversity? Can you guys think of any challenges that you have faced? Or maybe with some of the youth that you work with regarding cultural diversity? They come from a lot of different schools, a lot of different backgrounds.
I recall a foster child who was from another country.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly all of his history, but he ended up being in the U.S. with no family.
Oh, wow.
So it has been a struggle, and he did not speak English well.
Ooh.
So helping him navigate the educational system, the school system, helping him kind of getting to connect with someone, you know, it was a little difficult because he was from, I don't want to get it wrong, but I want to say someplace like Honduras. So it wasn't
Okay.
like where we just have a ready-made
Yeah.
group of people that he could connect to. So it was a struggle to find the right place for him, but I think we eventually did. But that is difficult for a child who may not speak English, and we don't think about that being the case, but it is. He was here, and we had to try to, and it's hard for the social worker to talk to him because there is a language gap, and he's sitting up there smiling, looking at you, and, you know, you're like, ugh, we don't know if this is going okay. But, you know, as a foster parent, you have to find ways to connect and
Yeah.
make that work because there was a language barrier.
Wow. And how old was he?
14?
Wow. Wow. And I imagine he hadn't been over here quite that long to even understand
Correct.
English.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's a huge challenge. And depending on what kind of setting he was in, whether that's the city or versus a rural area, could have made a world of difference as far as what resources you have to even help a child like that. Thank you for trying your best. All right, anybody else have a situation they'd like to share or a challenge that they face?
Jimmy Graham.
Yes, how are you?
All right, we'll go on. Describe a situation in which you accidentally felt or expressed cultural insensitivity. What did you learn?
I can tell you one example. Over the Christmas holiday, I had 3 granddaughters, and I had all my 3 granddaughters, I took them out to lunch. I took them all out to lunch, and 2 of my granddaughters are biracial. Their mother is Italian, my son is black. And while we were out to lunch, I just made an example, because my youngest granddaughter, who was 10 years of age, she speaks fluent Italian. And she makes all the hand gestures and everything, because she's very close to her grandmother on her mother's side. And I just made the comment, I said, you know what, you probably need to come to North Carolina more. Really didn't think anything of it. And then she went back to my house, and everybody was there, and my son came to me later on in that evening and says, you know what, Renee, don't think you love her because she don't act black enough. And I was wondering, I said, where did she get that from? And then I realized the comment I made at lunch when I took all 3 of them out to lunch, that you need to come to North Carolina more, because I mean, if you look at her, she looks Italian and she speaks Italian. But it was I didn't think I was being insensitive, but I was. And what I got from that is, even myself, I have to watch what I say. Sometimes maybe I didn't mean anything from it, but it's what the person got from my words. So a lot of times we can say things and don't think what we're saying is wrong, but the other person receives it wrong. You know, I learned a lot from just that little incident I had there on the holiday with her.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
How would you describe the culture of foster care and the impact it has on youth identity development? How would you describe the culture of foster care, I guess like in general, and the impact it has on youth identity development? Do you think, as you know, people of the whole foster care system, do you think we do a good job with helping youth identify culturally?
I can answer that. I think we need to do more.
Yeah.
We need to do more. I know we have these classes like this, but we need to do more in educating our parents as far as, you know, identity, diversity in their homes and stuff of that nature. I know when we used to do the newsletter, we used to send out in Fayetteville, various events that had that were different cultures or different diversities and stuff. And we used to put that into the newsletter. And we need to do more of that. We need to educate our parents more. on diversity in their home and stuff that, and bringing some of the parents together and just letting them talk about what they're doing in their homes. That, I mean, I gain a lot of insight, because a lot of our parents do some great things when they get a child with a different culture that I never even thought about. So I think that we can do more in that area there, as far as educating the parents.
What about any of the other ladies that are foster parents? Do you think, how can we make some, what is the culture of foster care in general and the impacts of the youth's identity development? What about the schools?
I would say that a lot of, well, the child that I have in my home, I can say that when it comes to decisions and things that's going on with the child, that if I don't advocate for the child, it does not happen. You know, although DSS is a legal guardian, DSS have a full caseload. So with that being said, they don't spend as much time with that child as I do with the child. So if I don't advocate for this child identity and to let the social worker know what's going on and what needs to happen, then it does not happen. So on the parent side of it, a lot of it depends on the foster parent side of it.
Okay, very good. And those are tough conversations to bring up.
Yes, because they have the final approval.
They do. And you don't want to offend the child, because if a child does feel offended, you can turn into a big power struggle, and that can just escalate into something that, you know, could have been just, you know, a simple misunderstanding like Leon had stated earlier. So it's tough to try to have those conversations. That's why, you know, we try to encourage you to ask open-ended questions when it comes to a child. Try to do it in an approach that's not out in the public like that. You know, just one-on-one sessions and kind of things like that to see where the child is at culturally, or with their identity altogether. Whether that's, you know, like we said, religious, gender, all of that. Okay, very good. All right, and then what can you do to nurture youth's connection to their biological family and culture? And there's various ways that we can go about doing that. And some children have more of a connection with their biological family versus others, but what are some things that you ladies think that we can do to help nurture that child's connection? I know we got brought up a good one earlier about the life book. All right, and that's a very good starting point. What are some other ways that we can try to reach out to try to be more open to that child's culture or connection with their family?
Encourage the relationship, you know, the phone conversations and the family conversations, setting up activities and, you know, things of that nature. And it takes a lot on my behalf, you know, like you're saying, the co-parenting, you know, allowing them to have an input on what's going on and actually enforcing that input. Because a lot of times they give suggestions, but do the parent really follow through with the suggestion? Okay,
very good, yeah, building those bridges. All right, and then lastly, our question was, what are some ways that you can help youth discover or rediscover their home culture and further support their identity development? There's lots of ways you can go about doing that. What were some things that you ladies feel like you can do to try to help that youth discover or be stronger with their own culture?
First, you need to find out what's within your community that they can connect with, because there are programs with the youth that was from another country. You know, although we couldn't find a specific support group for that particular nationality, there were other community supports that were willing to reach out and help us develop a support system for him and to find someone that he can connect with. So sometimes I think just in researching and learning,
just trying.
And what's in your community, but I think as foster parents, it's also important. If it's the culture, if it's something that you're not familiar with, sometimes we need to do our own research and understand
Yeah,
so that we can better support
yeah.
the child. And that may mean learning, you know, what is it like?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you have any friends that are African American?
Mhm.
You know, if you don't, maybe talking to someone to understand what is our culture about so that you can best support them, because, you know, that will help that child feel like you care.
Yeah, yeah. It's an
Because you
everyday
want to
process.
learn, you want to know who
Yeah.
I am, you want to, you're allowing me to embrace who I am.
Mm-hmm. It is. And you want to get the best trusted information that you can. Sometimes we go online and there's a lot of different sites and blogs about this, that, and the third, but you want to make sure that you're trusting the right resources with how to go about, you know, getting that information, and making sure that's as culturally sensitive as possible, when it comes to trying to connect with that youth. All right.
And another thing, when you talk about nurture youth connection to their biological family or culture, and I know we talked about this during our math session, is, you know, in their room, letting them have a bulletin board where they have pictures of their family members. Let them have pictures of some sports fan that they admire or respect or something of that nature. Letting them being able to watch various television shows that can connect them to their race and nationality. Those type of things there can also help them out also.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. All right, working with diversity, a diverse population. Working with a cultural diverse population. Usually when you use the terms cultural diversity, people automatically think of racial, ethnic diversity. The reality is that cultural diversity implies far more. Our ideals about cultural diversity need to expand in order for related issues to have meaning. What constitutes culture? One of the ways we think about cultures in terms of things we have in common, the following are some examples: shared food, shared holidays, shared experience, shared assumptions, shared religious beliefs, shared symbols, shared values. When we look at culture this way, we begin to see that difference in rural versus urban may be more significant than difference in race. That differences in parental levels of education may be more significant than difference in ethnicity. As foster parents explore cultural diversity with youth, they may need to look at issues beyond race. Parents need to look at the background of the youth and their families. And what they're talking about there, when you talk about rural versus urban, Southerners versus Northerners, we do things different. I'm from up north. When I went to school in the South, I tell you what, it took me a whole semester to figure out what they were talking about. Because the terminologies, you know, sodas is pop, and you know, that, just use that for example. But it did take me a while to figure out, you know, some of their cultures. And you know, I was black, but just from being up north and then coming to the South, it's different there. So just understand that it's not always race. You know, it's just maybe the child comes from a different part of the United States. And I tell you what, we do things differently. Southerners do things differently. I've been down south now for many years. And so when I go up north now, I kind of look at them strange, because we do things different down here. And if you go out west or to California, places like that. So just understand that, you know, and most of the times we do get children right from here in North Carolina, but we get them from various parts of North Carolina. You know, you can get a child from the city of Charlotte or backwoods of Fayetteville. They just come from different areas. Remember, cultural diversity implies far more than just racial and ethnic diversity. When we look at culture this way, we begin to see the difference in rural versus urban, assessing one's own cultural heritage. The better understanding and awareness a foster parent has about their own cultural heritage, the better prepared they will be to work with individuals and family from culturally diverse communities. In order to provide sensitive and effective care to children and families from cultures that are different than the one's own, two things must occur: an awareness of one's own culture, values, beliefs, and the recognition of how they can influence attitude and behavior, An understanding of culture, values, and beliefs of youth, and how these can influence youth's attitude and behavior. And attitude and behavior. The one thing you got to remember is that when we talk about own culture and our own beliefs is, you know, you may feel one way, but sometimes we have to educate those around in what we call in that inner circle when we get children of various races or cultures. Educating them, because you don't want the child to feel some kind of way. If you spend a lot of time with the aunt or uncle or your cousins over here and they go over there and they're talking, you know, against them or using certain terminologies that are racially, ethnic, or whatever, you need to educate your own people that are in that inner circle. And I think somebody talked about it earlier. You know, sometimes you have to be the advocates when these children go to the schoolhouse, educating them, because sometimes they just don't know. So just remember that. 'Cause those things do happen, yes.
I knew a foster parent, and they did not choose to have, they were very comfortable with other ethnicities in their home, they were Caucasian, but they were sensitive to their outside family members because some of them were not comfortable.
I think I know.
Yeah, so they were not comfortable, so, you know, so they chose to, what was important to them was to be able to provide foster care services and to help children. So their contact with their extended family was limited to the degree they dealt with them if that child was on a respite, or because they didn't want that child subject to what their family values were. It wasn't their values, but.
Well, and I thought that was great too, because they were able to see that
Mm-hmm.
and identify that as a possible issue for a foster child. And they didn't want that to be a problem, so, I mean, initially I was like, really? But then it does make sense, because you wanna make sure that foster kids are in the best environment to grow and thrive and not be subjected to that. So for them to be able to not really be in denial about their family, it was kind of, I've never really seen it like that before.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool that they were able to really talk about that with us, so.
And we all know that, you know, when you made the decision of becoming a foster parent, some of your relatives, some of your friends were behind you 100%, and then and then you had those other ones that says, you know what, when you get those bad kids, don't bring them around my kids. And you sat there and your mouth went open, because you didn't know they thought like that. But you'd be surprised, you'd really be surprised. And so now you're bringing a child of different race, different nationality, you need to find out what their thought is, how they feel about it. And like this individual here said, that you don't want to put them in a bad environment. Even though you're inside your home, it's a good environment, but you don't want to be subjected to those type of things.
And I find just by them, having that conversation with them can open up a lot of doors as far as why they feel like that. Sometimes it could just be a misunderstanding or a bad experience they had in the past that makes them feel like that right now. And I always try to tell them as an agency, we can't be biased about the kind of children that we accept. We have to have an open door policy for all children of referrals that come in. You can't discriminate children, those are laws, so you have to be mindful of that. And I like she said, I commend them for at least being honest with saying that, but I try to just have an open conversation with why they feel like that, to see if, if they would be willing to even give it a chance, or is that something that would be an absolute deal breaker for them? Because everybody's a little different about that. Some of us have deal breakers that we're not bending on, and then other things, okay, well maybe if they were a different religion, maybe it's just an education piece, or maybe if they had a certain medical condition or sexual orientation, maybe it's just about educating myself to understand a little bit more about that besides just being absolutely no. Because, worst case scenario, you get them in and causes disruptions, and then they wonder why they don't never get a placement for a while after that, you have to be honest with them from an agency standpoint. Look, we cannot discriminate the type of children that come into our homes. Just having an open conversation with them about it.
Okay. Responding to diversity in your home. What can we do to help to welcome that child into our home that's of a different race, a different nationality? What can we do to help them feel comfortable? Some general guidelines it talks about in here. Be respectful of all the cultures and their tradition. Allow and encourage youth choices. Allow voluntary participation in your family culture and ethnic activities, especially if they differ from that of your therapeutic foster youth. And provide access to culturally appropriate activities and locations for your therapeutic foster youth. What they're talking about is look out into the community. Get somebody to assist you. Find them mentors. Other things they talk about is ask your youth to share their life book with them. Adora talked about the life book, and we'll explain more about the life book further on in this session here. Seek out members of your youth culture and ethnicity. Seek out and find them positive mentors. Visit places where your youth can be among other people of their culture or ethnicity. Make your home culturally sensitive by providing multicultural food, art, music, media, toys, games. Visit museums, stores, local events that cater to culture and ethnicity of your youth. That's part of your community. Again, be respectful for other cultures. Talked about their life book. Connect therapy, foster youth to culture and ethnic activities. Make your home culturally sensitive by providing multicultural arts, tools, games, and other media types there. And one of the things we want to talk about is you want to be respectful for their culture and their tradition. Allow and encourage youth choices, and provide access to culturally appropriate activities throughout your community. And like we talked about before, you got the churches, you got the university, you got the colleges. Here in Goldsboro, you even got the Air Force Base here. You can find every ethnicity, every culture out there on that Air Force Base. And they do have support groups. They have various organizations right out there. Because I know on Fort Bragg, we call that the melting pot. In the Fort Bragg, Fayetteville area, you can find every culture, every nationality, every race in the United States or even overseas there. And it's the same way here in Goldsboro. So you do have that opportunity here in Goldsboro. All right. Right now we're going to do an activity called Cultural Diversity Vignette. And you have the slides in your packet. And in the slides, it's going to talk about what culture or identity difference may be driving the problem, what is the ultimate goal to solve the problem, and brainstorm some possible solutions, potential barriers to those solutions, and whether or not the solution can reasonably be done. And if you go to activity 5D, and I let Adora go ahead and select what activities that each group is going to do. I think you have like a vignette, 5 vignettes in there. And they're cut out. They're the cutout ones. Those are your vignettes.
If you want to do 2, then the other group does 2, and then maybe we can just do 1 altogether. Last one altogether. And then we posted the questions here on the wall, just in case you can't read that. And then pick one person out of the group to be the recorder.
So y'all gonna do 1 and 2, and then we do 3 and 4?
That's fine.
Okay, and then we'll
We'll
do
do
5
5
together.
together.
I don't have a 5.
And when you're doing these, when you're looking at these questions, there are no true answers. There's no wrong answers. It's just what your opinion is.
Okay, you got 4.
You have 1 and 2.
I have 1 and 2.
Okay, we're doing the others. Yeah.
I just said I'm applying to the group.
1
Can
and 2,
someone give me 3? I mean, you give me 4?
3, 4. Y'all need 4?
Here's 4.
I got 4.
Okay. So just do 3 and 4.
Retention, here's 4.
We'll do 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So like I said, just answer the questions up there and we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I'm gonna see yours.
I have 1 through 4. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Or no, there's 5. No, that's 2, 3, 4.
What is the goal?
After this one, we'll take another break, because we'll be right on time. All right. Huh? Oh, there's some extra ones in there, you see 5 in there?
And just lack of knowledge, probably misunderstanding, not really understanding. Because this is a situation, this man has a situation, and the people are just are making claims like.
What is this activity? Hold on.
5D.
5D? Yeah, it's only 4 vignettes. It's only 4.
You know, and so the teachers are giving him, and the teachers are giving him.
No, it's only 4.
They give him,
It's only 4.
or something, instead of wanting him to read. What I was saying is that, is he says it's like, you say it's okay. As a police student, but I kind of, I spent time as a 17-year-old, and the family was actually, in the school, like, so that's what I'm saying, I can really relate to this. People at the school are seeing faces like that. It is something, and so it's the same kind of situations. And so, you know, but the child, he's trying to do what's the levels. Just like he said, you know, he adores the families that he's with, you know, and he doesn't like this with uncle. Maybe he's coming, so that he's acting black. So, but this is a source of stress for him, he adores the family he lives with. So,
I mean, it's not a problem for Taco Bell, it's a problem for others.
it's the same situation here.
This is a cultural issue, other people.
The adults.
It's just those two, brainstorm some possible solutions, potential barriers.
And you have asked, you said, what we can go with there to solve the problem? For this scenario,
So basically,
This upwards, does he have to be? And if he is, it's for him. You know, he just needs to become more tolerant.
Maybe the uncle can take the nephew shop and be there, right? Well, no,
It's just that he's acting black, is what they're saying.
it makes other negative comments and jokes.
maybe he has to spend more time with us so that,
Maybe he can get to know the family. And they just become more tolerant and accepting of the family. And he had to really keep in mind that they're really being a blessing to his nephew by taking care of him.
Okay.
And that's what's
Just
important.
let him know that.
but maybe you're sending also another option that the uncle maybe needs to learn more about the family that he's involved with. You know, find out little corners as to why his nephew is acting this way.
Yeah, it could be from a lot of different, environments for him to feel comfortable fitting in.
And put his acting black, see?
Yeah. It's not
So that is the question, they need to find out what is acting black. And so for this, understand that, you know, the child is refusing to go to church. What is no good upon the parent attending a church that supports the child's religion?
So, yeah.
You know, might not be every, you know, I would say leave the church every so often.
I think.
But, you know, maybe twice out the month, that she can attend her church, you know, learn about this child's religion.
Yeah, I think that would be a good solution. That could be a good solution to it. What what cultural problems drive she could be. I guess in that scenario, would be,
But not necessarily teachers.
She could be forced to practice their religion. So,
But it's just like when you
maybe,
have your child.
for example, if the child, so she doesn't want to go to the church at all. But that could be, so the barrier would be, the child doesn't want to go to church with the mom, also mom and all. But a possible solution would be, I go 2 days out the month, and you go with me 2 days out the month, and we learn about each other's religion.
seems like the child grew leadership maybe, and gained more cultural experience, cultural knowledge about what is her family's actual religion.
But we won't know that.
I see, initially, she had no problems going to church with this family, but she did with them years before, right? And so, and she had a positive relationship with them, but when she came back, and I think it's just going to see what happened. Well, you know, when she was gone, where she placed back with her mother, we don't know, and that's another one of those things we need to know, get a better understanding of what has happened, what her experiences has been, what is affecting her.
And then if
Lots of
once you look at the
Yeah, so
placement,
maybe the foster
other thing
parents
may
and
be
moms
to,
don't have a very good relationship with them too.
look at
Sometimes that
possibly
brings up
moving
a
her
lot
to
of,
a home that she's feel more comfortable.
I guess, unpleasantness.
And hopefully you
So
can find
that
a
could be what's
safe
driving the
space
problem.
so
But the goal to solve the problem, like you said, split up the time, and put one for each one. Barriers for that would be planning,
Support groups or something.
it's
Time,
good to find support.
yeah.
background preferences also as well, because you have to go learn about a religion that you really just care for.
Okay. Yeah, be open-minded as foster parents, so that's one thing that we can get into it. Okay, then, that's a reasonable, I think that's a reasonable solution.
Yes, it's reasonable.
So you're saying that the possible solution would be to, for the foster parent to go with her church?
Share time, making provisions for this.
And then what else?
Any barriers? I mean, I think there might be a language barrier there too.
Are there any barriers to you guys' solutions that you think of? Each one of your units?
Yeah, I think, you know, with the, if we were trying to
The barrier
salvage
is the
that
language.
placement.
Well, but Maria is, foster parent.
It was Maria who went to a church of her choosing.
So that
It's very real possible that church is Spanish speaking.
And that's what I
And
said,
it would be a language
for the foster parent.
So foster parents already have had a chance,
Wow, yeah.
Making sure that they are open.
So it's a lot of different things going on with this case.
So you could have two different solutions for that.
Depending on where
Share the
they
church
are.
time, and the foster parents can come and more educated.
If they're in
On the Spanish
a small
culture.
community, rural community,
And
they
language.
may not have,
And language.
support groups available. That's right there, or it might be.
Because you do want to want this child to go to work at home, whether she leaves again or comes back.
Support group.
Support group.
I'm not sure if you're down in, Newton Road, you're not gonna find a healthy support group. You got to travel, but if you're in Gold, bro, you
Could be a solution,
find
right?
some family, a little small community, you may not find that.
Sitting in the church.
And then I think one of the things, you know, if she is doing that, I'll be asking her, and I know, one of the people what it is.
They're exploring, and especially that they're exploring. That's exactly what she's probably doing, exploring.
And sometimes if you make too much of it,
And, yeah.
there's.
Don't wanna treat it like the
don't
elephant in
want
the
it-
room, but
exactly,
sometimes you
but
don't wanna make it a big issue and just let it work its way.
Mhm.
Maybe work
All
out.
right. Are we about ready to discuss our vignettes? All right.
That's what it was
The,
good.
Okay, we'll start off with one. Oh.
Down there.
All right, are you gonna read it or I have to read it?
Thank you.
I'll read it.
Oh, yeah, that works.
Scenario 1, the Millers are an African-American family from Greenville, North Carolina. They recently had a 17-year-old white male named Steve placed with them. The Millers have been very open to trying new placements. When Steve was first admitted, things were going fine, and as is often true during the honeymoon period. But after about 6 weeks, he decided that he did not want to eat their food anymore. He would not eat any meal prepared by any member of the family. Whatever they made, he just didn't like.
All right. And so what cultural or identity difference may be driving the problem?
We said that because he said that he didn't want to eat any of their food, it may be race may be one of the problems. It may be that he doesn't feel comfortable. They may have made a comment or something that makes him not feel comfortable in that home. So he's kind of, lashing out as in, I'm not gonna eat your food, that kind of thing. Or it just may be simply food type. He just might not like the way that they cook things or what they're cooking or that kind of stuff.
Okay. And he could have been okay with the placement coming in, but you don't know what outside sources are being
Good
said to
example.
him.
Yeah.
Good example.
And it's coming back and filtering back into the home and that's what he's basing his behavior off of.
Very good. Because we do find a lot of times when children start getting acclimated to the home, and then you start incorporating visitations with family, they come back and you'll see behavioral differences. Okay, so what would be the ultimate goal to solve the problem? What are you trying to achieve overall?
We had said, just for a main thing, communication. Just being straightforward and open and honest and asking him, why? What's making you not want to eat what we are cooking, Is it you don't like it? You explain it better.
You were in the right track.
I'm not good at explaining.
Communication was a big one, but you want to have a good communication within that relationship to establish a healthy relationship with them. Okay? So you were on the right there. So your overall goal is to have a healthy relationship with him.
And to make sure that the placement is viable, we want to make sure he's supported and he's comfortable, but we also want to make sure, but the foster parent, we need to see where they are with it and to let them know we're having some issues that are coming up. So I think that case manager would really have to be crucial in having those conversations and making sure that nothing has occurred. We still want to make sure nothing has occurred with that child within that home that makes him feel that way. But we've got to be able to talk with him. We have to be able to make sure, I think it was it him, her? Whatever. But we have to talk to him to make sure that he's okay. And figure out where the information is coming from, because to be okay, and we know they do have honeymoon periods, but there's always something that's generally feeding that. It could be, he could be going to school and his peers that are a group just like him have a problem with him being in a black home.
Yes, that's true.
So
Peer
when
pressure.
peer pressure could be, so we have to figure out where the problem may be stemming from in order to know how to best handle it. And then, if this child is completely uncomfortable in this home and he feels, I just can't do this, then that may mean we do need to find a more suitable placement. But I think ultimately it would be to make sure that he's in an environment that's going to help him continue to go on that positive track, you know, and if this is gonna be a stumbling block for him, it may not be the best placement.
Okay,
So communication.
yeah, all right, so there's several ways of going about that,
Mhm.
all right? What was one solution that you ladies determined may help the situation?
Open dialogue is what I wrote. Discuss
Open
if he's
dialogue,
Discuss if he's comfortable in the home, maybe let him choose if it's that he doesn't like what they're cooking, or let him choose what they have for dinner that night.
meal
Or
plan, yeah.
maybe just, say like on Wednesdays, you know, we'll go to your favorite restaurant or something.
Okay, all right, and what kind of barriers would we have for that? If he was helping out with the meal planning, can you foresee any barriers to that situation?
He may pick something that everybody else don't like.
Yeah. Or you could, you know, it could be, an issue of them not having the foods available for him. Like we were talking about with children that's not from this area, certain foods are hard to find. And if they have that, you know, secret grandma recipe, you can't find that one ingredient. I don't care, it's not, never gonna taste just the same. So that could be a barrier. Or if you're going out to eat on a regular basis, and let's say the budget just don't allow that, we just have Christmas, I mean.
And I think attitude plays a part in that. That's the barrier, you know. Sometimes I think that's how you end up getting into power struggles. Sometimes
Yeah.
if you're not aware of your own biases, with the child saying, you know, I'm not comfortable. So, because sometimes we may not mean to, but you feel defensive, like, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with our home? Why would you want to, you know, we're clean. And they could take it defensively. And if you take it defensively, then it makes it harder to come to a reasonable solution.
Yeah. Or in some cultures, men do not cook at all. It is the lady's responsibility. You know, that could bring up another barrier too. He can assist with coming up with ideas, but he doesn't want to actually help prepare the food.
Mhm.
That's gonna bring up some issues later on as well. All right, but those are possible resources, possible solutions to the situation. Do you feel like that's a reasonable or unreasonable solution? Let's discuss maybe with the meal prepping or meal planning. That seems feasible. What about going out to eat?
I think it just depends.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on what time of the month it is. All right, what about the meal prepping? Him actually getting in the kitchen and helping to cook his own food?
I mean,
Would that
if
be
he's
reasonable?
old enough, well,
Yeah.
what did he say?
You said
17, so he's old enough.
He's old enough, if he's cognitive enough, safe enough to be around, you know, knives and, machines, you know, blenders and stuff like that. All right, very good. Okay, so for this one, the outcome would, this is what they suggest. Initially, the Millers bought different groceries for their youth that he liked and he could fix for himself. It wasn't long before the Millers began to notice a significant increase in expense created by the situation. Next, they decided to try involving him more in overall meal planning and preparation. They told Steve that he could prepare his own food, but they would all be eating from the same menu, in which he now had a role in creating. At first, Steve opted to fix his own dinner, though in a short time he came to the realization that he actually preferred the way in which the Millers prepared the food, and soon began eating the food they prepared. Alright, so they gave him an opportunity to fix his own food, and he eventually came around to, you know, kind of liking their food a little bit better. It's always easy to have an opinion about things until the rubber meets the road and you actually got to do it yourself. Okay, alright, good. Let's skip over to our other group. Would you ladies like to read your scenario 3?
Ben is a 15-year-old white male placed in an African-American foster home. Although no one in his family is a viable placement resource, DSS has approved day visits with the maternal uncle. Ben reports that during these visits, his uncle talks to him about acting black and makes other negative comments and jokes about African This is a source of stress for Ben, as he adores the family he lives with.
All right. Okay, so, what cultural or identity differences may be driving the problems for Ben or for that family?
Well, it looks like, that really Ben is fine with where he is, it says he adores the family that he lives with, but
Yeah.
it's his family member, the maternal, uncle, who, is making negative comments and saying things like that he's acting black, and makes other negative comments and jokes about African Americans. So this is a stressor or a difficult situation, and it really causes issues for the child in the foster home. So I think that his uncle is probably, sounds like he's a little closed-minded,
Okay.
and he probably needs to be educated, maybe more so. And then also, I think that in a situation like this, I think that the legal guardians, DSS would have to really determine whether this is, visits that need to continue to occur if they can't work through the conflict. Hopefully they can, because it's important to have biological family involved. And hopefully they can work with him and get the uncle to have a better understanding, so maybe they can spend some time together. The uncle can get to know the family, therefore begin to view them in a different light, begin to have a different kind of respect for them. So, there's lots of things that could happen or may need to happen, yeah.
All right, well, let's go over your first solution, which I think I
Okay.
heard you say was,
Mhm,
educate him a little bit more.
mhm.
All right, and when we say education, what, we're meaning cultural education for Ben? Or the uncle about Ben's culture?
Mhm.
What kind of barrier can you foresee with that happening? Time?
Yes,
Yeah.
because he has approved day visits with the uncle, so that would need to be approved with the DSS.
Yeah,
So it's basically a treatment team meeting would need to take place to see
Very
if that's
good.
even an option.
yeah.